Welcome, dear listener. I'm so glad you're here. Before we begin tonight's calming journey, don't forget to subscribe, tap the bell icon so you never miss a bedtime story. Leave a like if this helps you relax and share your thoughts in the comments. I love hearing from you. Now, lay back, take a deep breath, and let the world fade away. Wishing you a peaceful night, sweet dreams, and the deepest, most restful sleep. Let's begin.
Chapter 1. The Origins of the Israelites. The story of Israel begins not with a state, a king, or even a people, but with a promise. According to tradition and the Hebrew Bible, the patriarch Abraham, then known as Abram, was called by God from the city of Ur in Mesopotamia to travel to a new land, Canaan. God made a covenant with him, promising that his descendants would become a great nation and inherit this land. Abraham's journey, both literal and spiritual, became foundational to Jewish identity. His son Isaac and grandson Jacob continued this legacy. Jacob, later renamed Israel after wrestling with an angel, had 12 sons. These sons became the progenitors of the 12 tribes of Israel. Their descendants, according to biblical tradition, migrated to Egypt during a time of famine. In Egypt, the Israelites flourished for a time, but eventually fell into bondage. Their dramatic deliverance from slavery under the leadership of Moses, an adopted Egyptian prince turned prophet, marks one of the central events in Jewish religious history: the Exodus. Chapter 2. The Exodus and the Wilderness. Moses' leadership brought the Israelites out of Egypt, across the Red Sea, and into the Sinai wilderness. There, on Mount Sinai, they received the 10 Commandments, a moral and legal code that would come to define Jewish ethics and identity. This moment marked the formation of a covenantal community, a people bound not only by ancestry, but by divine law. For 40 years, the Israelites wandered in the wilderness, during which they developed their religious practices, legal traditions, and social structure. The journey was as much about transformation as it was about destination. Upon Moses' death, leadership passed to Joshua, who led the conquest of Canaan, as described in the book of Joshua. Chapter 3. The Period of the Judges. After the conquest, the Israelites settled in Canaan, but lacked a centralized government. Instead, they were ruled by a series of judges, charismatic leaders, who rose during times of crisis. Figures like Deborah, Gideon, Samson, and Samuel are prominent in this era. This period was marked by constant conflict with neighboring peoples such as the Philistines, Moabites, and Ammonites. The recurring cycle of sin, oppression, repentance, and deliverance defined the spiritual and political rhythm of Israelite life during these centuries. Chapter 4. The United Monarchy. The tribes eventually sought stability and unity under a monarchy. The first king of Israel was Saul, anointed by the prophet Samuel. Saul initially united the tribes, but later fell out of favor with both God and Samuel due to his disobedience. David, a shepherd from the tribe of Judah and former court musician, succeeded Saul. He is remembered not only as a military hero and poet, but as the king who established Jerusalem as the national capital. He brought the Ark of the Covenant to the city, thereby centralizing both political and religious authority. David's son Solomon succeeded him and expanded the kingdom to its greatest geographical extent. He constructed the first temple in Jerusalem, a magnificent structure that became the focal point of Jewish worship. Solomon's reign, though marked by wisdom and prosperity, ended with increasing internal discontent due to forced labor and heavy taxation. Chapter 5. The Divided Kingdom. After Solomon's death, his kingdom split in two: the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. The northern kingdom, comprising 10 tribes, was ruled from Samaria, while Judah, home to the tribes of Judah and Benjamin, continued to be ruled from Jerusalem. This division weakened both kingdoms. The northern kingdom quickly fell into idolatry and political instability. It was eventually conquered by the Assyrian Empire in 722 BCE, and its people were exiled, becoming the so-called 10 lost tribes of Israel. Judah fared better for a time, but ultimately followed a similar trajectory of moral and political decline. The rise of the Babylonian Empire under King Nebuchadnezzar spelled the end for Judah. In 586 BCE, Jerusalem was conquered, the first temple was destroyed, and much of the population was exiled to Babylon. Chapter 6. Faith in Exile. Despite the destruction and exile, the Israelites did not vanish. Instead, this catastrophe led to profound spiritual reflection and transformation. The exile marked the beginning of Judaism as a portable faith, no longer tied exclusively to land and temple, but to scripture, prayer, and communal memory. Prophets such as Ezekiel and Jeremiah emerged during this time, offering both warnings and hope. They emphasized personal responsibility, ethical monotheism, and the idea of a future restoration. Chapter 7. Babylonian Captivity and the Rise of Persia. The Babylonian exile was a watershed in Jewish history. Uprooted from their land and stripped of their temple, the Jewish people were forced to grapple with the meaning of their identity and faith in foreign soil. In Babylon, they established thriving communities and preserved their traditions through oral law, prayer gatherings, and the compilation of sacred texts. A major turn came in 539 BCE, when the Persian king Cyrus the Great conquered Babylon. Known for his policy of tolerance, Cyrus issued an edict allowing exiled peoples, including the Jews, to return to their homelands and rebuild their temples. For the Jews, this marked the beginning of the Second Temple period. Chapter 8. The Return and the Second Temple. Under the leadership of figures like Zerubbabel, Ezra, and Nehemiah, thousands of Jews returned to Judea. Though a shadow of its former self, the community began reconstructing its institutions and identity. The Second Temple was completed around 516 BCE. Ezra the scribe played a crucial role in re-establishing religious observance and the public reading of the Torah. This era saw the formalization of Judaism as a religion of the book, centering not only on sacrifice, but also on scripture, study, and prayer. Despite these efforts, the Jewish population remained a minority in its own land. Most Jews stayed in Babylon, Egypt, or other parts of the expanding diaspora. Chapter 9. The Hellenistic Era and Cultural Conflict. In 332 BCE, Alexander the Great conquered the Persian Empire, including Judea. After his death, his empire was divided, and Judea became a battleground between the Ptolemies of Egypt and the Seleucids of Syria. Hellenistic culture, with its language, philosophy, gymnasiums, and polytheism, permeated Jewish society. Some Jews embraced this influence, others saw it as a threat to their religious identity. Tensions reached a boiling point under Antiochus Epiphanes, who attempted to forcefully Hellenize the Jews. He desecrated the temple by erecting an altar to Zeus and banning key Jewish practices.
Chapter 10. The Maccabean Revolt and Hasmonean Rule. The Jewish response was the Maccabean Revolt, 167 to 160 BCE, led by the priestly family of Hasmoneans. Judah Maccabee and his brothers waged a guerrilla war and miraculously reclaimed the temple, purifying it in 164 BCE, an event commemorated by the festival of Hanukkah. The revolt marked not only a religious but also a national reawakening. For about a century, the Hasmonean dynasty ruled an independent Jewish state, expanding its borders and reclaiming sovereignty. However, the dynasty also became increasingly Hellenized and politically unstable. Chapter 11. Rome and the Herodian Kingdom. In 63 BCE, the Roman general Pompey intervened in a Hasmonean civil war and entered the temple in Jerusalem. From that moment, Judea became a client state of Rome. In 37 BCE, Herod the Great was appointed king of Judea by the Roman Senate. Though not of Davidic lineage and considered by many Jews as an illegitimate ruler, Herod maintained order and embarked on ambitious building projects, most notably the renovation and expansion of the Second Temple. Herod's reign was marked by brutality, paranoia, and extravagance. After his death, Judea came under direct Roman administration, governed by procurators like Pontius Pilate. Chapter 12. The Birth of Christianity and Jewish Unrest. In the 1st century CE, Judea was simmering with discontent. Roman taxation, religious tensions, and messianic expectations created a volatile atmosphere. During this time, Jesus of Nazareth began his ministry. His teachings, crucifixion, and the claims of his resurrection gave rise to Christianity, a movement that would ultimately reshape world history. For many Jews, however, the primary focus remained on national liberation. Resistance grew, and in 66 CE, the First Jewish-Roman War erupted. In 70 CE, the Roman general, later Emperor Titus, crushed the rebellion and destroyed the Second Temple. Chapter 13. Bar Kokhba and the Final Revolt. Despite the catastrophe of 70 CE, hopes for redemption endured. In 132 CE, the charismatic leader Simon Bar Kokhba led another major revolt, which briefly established an independent Jewish state. However, the Romans responded with overwhelming force. By 135 CE, the revolt was crushed. Emperor Hadrian renamed Jerusalem Aelia Capitolina and banned Jews from the city. Judea was renamed Syria Palestina in an attempt to erase Jewish identity from the land. Chapter 14. Legacy of the Second Temple Era. Though defeated militarily, the Jewish people were not spiritually broken. The destruction of the temple led to the rise of Rabbinic Judaism, a decentralized, portable faith centered on synagogues, Torah study, and oral tradition, which later formed the Mishnah and Talmud. Diaspora communities grew and flourished across the Roman Empire, maintaining their customs and longing for eventual return to Zion. The trauma of the temple's fall became part of the Jewish liturgical calendar, notably in the fast of Tisha B'Av. Chapter 15. Life after exile, the early diaspora. With Jerusalem destroyed and Judea depopulated, Jewish life shifted decisively into the diaspora. Communities across Babylon, Alexandria, Asia Minor, and Rome began to grow. These Jewish populations retained a strong religious identity centered on Torah,
synagogue worship, and the teachings of rabbis. Babylon in particular became a major center of Jewish thought, eventually producing the Babylonian Talmud, a monumental work that would serve as the foundation of Rabbinic Judaism for centuries. Despite dispersion, Jews maintained unity through shared language, Hebrew for ritual, Aramaic or Greek in daily use, common religious practice, and a spiritual connection to the land of Israel, expressed through daily prayers for return. Chapter 16. Jews in the Roman and Byzantine worlds. In the Roman Empire, Jews enjoyed varying degrees of autonomy and restriction. In cities like Rome, Jewish communities flourished, building synagogues and engaging in commerce. However, as Christianity rose to dominance in the 4th century CE, Jewish status declined. Under the Byzantine Empire, Jews were tolerated but increasingly marginalized. Laws restricted synagogue construction, land ownership, and participation in civic life. Forced conversions and mob violence became more common. Still, Jewish culture adapted. New forms of piety, mysticism, poetry, and communal leadership emerged to sustain identity amid growing adversity. Chapter 17. The Golden Age in the Islamic World. A new chapter began with the rise of Islam in the 7th century. The Arab conquest of Palestine, Mesopotamia, North Africa, and Iberia brought most Jews under Muslim rule. While considered dhimmi, protected but subordinate, Jews found more tolerance and autonomy under Islamic governance than under Christian rule. Baghdad became a major center of Jewish life. Under the Abbasid Caliphate, the Exilarch, head of the Jewish community, and the Geonim, heads of academies, played vital roles in Jewish leadership. The academies of Sura and Pumbedita thrived, and Jewish law, philosophy, and liturgy flourished. In Al-Andalus, Muslim Spain, the golden age of Jewish culture peaked. Scholars like Saadia Gaon, philosopher and grammarian, Judah Halevi, poet and theologian, Maimonides, rabbi, doctor, and philosopher, contributed vastly to Jewish and global intellectual life. Jews participated in government, science, philosophy, and medicine. Chapter 18. The Rise of European Anti-Semitism. While Jewish life thrived in Muslim lands, in Christian Europe, Jews faced increasing hostility. Early medieval Christian theology often blamed Jews for the death of Jesus, leading to suspicion and violence. Key developments: forced conversions and public disputations. Blood libels and accusations of well poisoning, especially during the Black Death. Crusader massacres, particularly during the First Crusade, 1096. Expulsions from England, 1290. France, 1306, 1394, and Spain, 1492. Despite persecution, Jewish communities in Ashkenazic Europe, Germany, Poland, Eastern Europe, developed rich cultural and religious life. Yiddish became the common vernacular, and a network of kahillas, communities, maintained education, charity, and legal order. Chapter 19. Eastern Europe and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. By the 16th century, Poland-Lithuania became the largest and most vibrant Jewish community in the world. Jews were granted autonomy through the Council of Four Lands, overseeing education, taxation, and law. This period saw the flourishing of yeshivas, Talmudic academies, Hasidic Judaism, led by Baal Shem Tov and his disciples in the 18th century, opposition by mitnagdim, led by figures like the Vilna Gaon, and growing messianic movements, including the failed movement of Shabbatai Tzvi. But this golden period ended in violence and upheaval. The Chmielnitsky massacres, 1648–49, devastated Jewish communities in Ukraine. Later partitions of Poland placed Jews under Tsarist Russian rule, where they faced harsh restrictions in the Pale of Settlement.
Chapter 20. The Modern Era and the Rise of Zionism. Enlightenment, a Scala, offered new ideas of secularism, reason, and assimilation. Figures like Moses Mendelssohn argued for integration into European society. Jews began to enter universities, professions, and politics. However, rising nationalism and racist ideologies turned many against Jewish integration. The Dreyfus Affair in France and brutal pogroms in Russia shattered hopes of full acceptance. In response, a new movement emerged, Zionism. Theodor Herzl, shocked by anti-Semitism in supposedly enlightened Europe, called for the establishment of a Jewish homeland. In 1896, he published Der Judenstaat, the Jewish state. The first Zionist Congress was held in Basel in 1897, advocating for the return to Palestine. Chapter 21. The First Aliyot and Ottoman Palestine. In the 1880s, waves of Jewish immigration to Palestine began, known as the Aliyot. Early settlers established agricultural communities, kibbutzim and moshavim, faced disease, poverty, and hostility, revived the Hebrew language, thanks to pioneers like Eliezer ben Yehuda. At the time, Palestine was part of the Ottoman Empire. Jewish immigrants often purchased land legally, but encountered rising tensions with local Arab populations. By the early 20th century, Jewish institutions like the Jewish National Fund and World Zionist Organization laid the groundwork for a future state. Chapter 22. The Balfour Declaration and British Mandate. After the defeat of the Ottoman Empire in World War I, Britain gained control over Palestine through the League of Nations mandate system. In 1917, British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour issued the Balfour Declaration, expressing support for the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. This declaration, vague in language and controversial in its implications, energized the Zionist movement. Jewish immigration increased, with new aliyot bringing tens of thousands of Jews to the land, many fleeing anti-Semitism in Eastern Europe. The British Mandate period, 1920 to 1948, was marked by development of Jewish institutions, Histadrut, labor union, Haganah, defense force, Jewish agency, governing body, founding of Tel Aviv, Hebrew University, and other cultural educational centers. Tensions with the Arab population, who felt betrayed by both British promises and growing Jewish immigration. Chapter 23. Arab-Jewish conflict in Mandate Palestine. As Jewish immigration grew, so did Arab opposition. Riots in 1920, 1929, especially the Hebron massacre, and 1936 to 1939 shook the Yishuv, Jewish community. The Great Arab Revolt of 1936 to 39 aimed to end Jewish immigration and challenge British rule. In response, the British issued white papers limiting Jewish immigration, especially tragic during the rise of Nazi Germany. Zionist defense forces like the Haganah, Irgun, and Lehi, Stern Gang, emerged. While the Haganah worked with the British, the Irgun and Lehi
engaged in militant resistance, including attacks on British infrastructure. Chapter 24. The Holocaust and the Moral Imperative. From 1933 to 1945, the Holocaust fundamentally reshaped Jewish history and global conscience. 6 million Jews were murdered by the Nazis and their collaborators, an annihilation that devastated communities across Europe. Survivors, many homeless and stateless, languished in displaced persons camps. For them, and for Jews worldwide, the need for a secure homeland was no longer theoretical. It was urgent and existential. Zionist leaders intensified lobbying efforts in Washington and London. Meanwhile, illegal immigration, Aliyah Bet, continued, defying British restrictions. The tragedy of the Exodus 1947 ship turned away from Palestine with Holocaust survivors on board, galvanized public opinion. Chapter 25. The Road to Independence. After World War II, Britain, drained and pressured, turned the Palestine question over to the United Nations. In 1947, the UN Partition Plan proposed dividing the land into a Jewish state, an Arab state, and an internationalized Jerusalem. The Jewish leadership accepted the plan. The Arab leadership rejected it. Violence erupted across Palestine. On May 14, 1948, as the British withdrew, David Ben-Gurion declared the State of Israel. In Tel Aviv, the Declaration of Independence proclaimed the Jewish right to statehood in their ancient homeland. Chapter 26. The 1948 Arab-Israeli War. War of Independence, Nakba. Immediately after independence, 5 Arab nations, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq, invaded Israel. Despite being outgunned and outnumbered, the Israel Defense Forces, IDF, formed from underground militias, held out and gained territory beyond the UN partition borders. The war resulted in over 6,000 Israeli dead, nearly 1% of the population. The exodus of over 700,000 Palestinian Arabs, many of whom became permanent refugees, event known as the Nakba, or catastrophe. The annexation of the West Bank by Jordan and Gaza by Egypt. The war ended in 1949 with armistice agreements, but no peace treaty. The Arab-Israeli conflict was born. Chapter 27. Building a New Nation. In its early years, Israel faced immense challenges, absorbing over 850,000 Jewish refugees from Arab lands, establishing institutions of democracy and education, reviving Hebrew as a modern spoken language, developing an economy from agriculture to industry and tech. Despite rationing and poverty, Israel held free elections, developed a parliamentary democracy, and built a universal military draft through the IDF. Women gained voting rights and served in military and political roles, unique in the Middle East. Chapter 28. The Suez Crisis and Growing Tensions. In 1956, after Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser nationalized the Suez Canal, Israel joined Britain and France in a military campaign. Though victorious on the battlefield, Israel was pressured by the US and USSR to withdraw. Tensions with neighboring states, especially Syria and Egypt, escalated over water rights, border raids, and Palestinian guerrilla activity. Chapter 29. The Six-Day War, 1967. In June 1967, following weeks of Arab mobilization and Egyptian closure of the Straits of Tiran, Israel launched a preemptive strike. In just 6 days, Israel defeated Egypt, Jordan, and Syria, captured the Sinai Peninsula, Gaza Strip, West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Golan Heights. For many Israelis, this was a miraculous victory. For many Arabs, a humiliating defeat. The war reshaped the region, and created an occupation issue that remains central to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Chapter 30. The Yom Kippur War, 1973. In 1973, on the holiest day in Judaism, Yom Kippur, Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack. Initial Arab successes shocked Israel. After fierce fighting, the IDF repelled the assault and advanced toward Cairo and Damascus. The war led to a reassessment of Israeli security, a surge in U.S. aid, and eventually, the Camp David Accords. Chapter 31. The Peace with Egypt. In 1979, under U.S. President Jimmy Carter, Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin and Egyptian President Anwar Sadat signed the first Arab-Israeli peace treaty. Israel returned the Sinai. Egypt recognized Israel. Sadat was later assassinated by Islamists. This peace, while cold, has endured and changed regional dynamics. Chapter 32. The Palestinian Question. After the 1967 war, Israel came into control of territories with large Palestinian populations, the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem. The occupation of these areas became one of the most contentious issues in modern geopolitics. In 1964, the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, was established with the goal of creating an independent Palestinian state. Under the leadership of Yasser Arafat, the PLO engaged in guerrilla warfare and terrorism against Israel throughout the 1970s and 1980s. High-profile incidents included the 1972 Munich Olympics massacre, plane hijackings and bombings, military operations from Jordan, Lebanon, and later Tunisia. Israel, in response, carried out reprisals and intelligence operations across the Middle East and Europe. Chapter 33. The First Intifada, 1987-1993. In 1987, after years of occupation, land seizures, and political stagnation, Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza launched a mass uprising, the First Intifada, Arabic for shaking off. This uprising included stone throwing, protests and civil disobedience, Israeli curfews, arrests and military crackdowns, the rise of Hamas, an Islamist movement opposed to Israel's existence. The Intifada deeply affected Israeli and Palestinian society and pushed international actors to seek a negotiated settlement. Chapter 34. The Oslo Accords. In 1993, Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and PLO Chairman Yasser Arafat, under U.S. mediation by President Bill Clinton, signed the Oslo Accords on the White House lawn. The agreements included mutual recognition between Israel and the PLO, creation of the Palestinian Authority to govern parts of the West Bank and Gaza, a phased process for final status negotiations. The accords were historic, the first time the two sides had formally acknowledged each other. But the process was fragile. In 1995, Rabin was assassinated by a Jewish extremist, and the peace process began to unravel. Chapter 35. The Second Intifada, 2000 to 2005. After failed peace talks at Camp David in 2000, and a visit by Ariel Sharon to the Temple Mount Haram al-Sharif, the Second Intifada broke out. Unlike the first, this was far more violent. Suicide bombings struck buses, cafes, and hotels. Israel launched military operations into Palestinian towns and refugee camps. The construction of a West Bank security barrier began. Thousands died on both sides. Trust collapsed, and political divisions widened. Chapter 36. Disengagement and Gaza conflict. In 2005, Prime Minister Ariel Sharon unilaterally withdrew Israeli settlers and troops from Gaza, hailed by some as a bold peace gesture and by others as a betrayal. The withdrawal reshaped the Israeli political landscape. In 2006, Hamas won Palestinian parliamentary elections and eventually took control of Gaza, expelling the Fatah-led Palestinian Authority. Since then, Israel and Hamas have fought several conflicts. 2008-2009, Gaza War. 2012, Operation Pillar of Defense. 2014, Operation Protective Edge. 2021 and 2023, escalations. Rocket attacks on Israeli towns and airstrikes on Gaza became recurring cycles of violence. Chapter 37. The Abraham Accords and New Alliances. In 2020, Israel signed normalization agreements with United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco. The Abraham Accords, brokered by the Trump administration. These marked a dramatic shift in Middle East diplomacy driven by shared concerns over Iran, economic and technological cooperation, fatigue with the Palestinian issue. Israel's relations with Egypt and Jordan remained formally peaceful but cautious. Chapter 38. Society, Religion, and Demographics. Israeli society is diverse, complex, and often divided. Secular versus religious Jews, Ashkenazi versus Sephardi Mizrahi Jews, growing ultra-Orthodox Haredi populations, large numbers of Russian-speaking immigrants from the former USSR, Ethiopian Jews, Druze, Bedouins, and over 2 million Arab citizens. Social tensions exist over military service, civil marriage, Sabbath observance, and economic inequality. Yet, despite division, Israel has managed to sustain a democratic system with regular elections and peaceful transfers of power. Chapter 39. Economic and Technological Growth. Dubbed the Startup Nation, Israel became a world leader in cybersecurity, agri-tech, medical innovation, military technology. Despite minimal natural resources, Israel developed a strong economy through education, immigration, and innovation. It joined the OECD in 2010 and has one of the highest concentrations of tech startups globally. The Israeli shekel became one of the most stable currencies in the world. Chapter 40. Politics in the 21st Century. Israeli politics has seen growing polarization. Figures like Ariel Sharon, who left Likud to form Kadima, Ehud Barak, Ehud Olmert, and especially Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's longest-serving prime minister, shaped decades of policy. The Israeli parliament, Knesset, is deeply fragmented, leading to frequent elections. Right-wing, religious, centrist, and Arab parties constantly form shifting coalition. Chapter 41. The Iranian Threat and Regional Security. Among Israel's greatest strategic concerns in the 21st century has been Iran's regional ambitions and its nuclear program. Iran supports militant groups opposed to Israel's existence. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza, and pro-Iranian militias in Syria and Iraq. Israel, often with covert assistance from Western allies, has conducted airstrikes in Syria to prevent Iranian entrenchment, allegedly carried out cyber operations, intervention, Stuxnet, opposed the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, JCPOA, and pushed for tighter sanctions. The fear of a nuclear-armed Iran remains a cornerstone of Israeli foreign and defense policy. Chapter 42. Political fragmentation and social unrest. In recent years, Israeli politics have experienced a series of crises. 5 elections between 2019 and 2022, shifting coalitions and political gridlock, a rotating premiership between Benjamin Netanyahu, Naftali Bennett, Yair Lapid, and others. The country is polarized between right and left, secular and religious, Jewish and Arab, urban elites and peripheral communities. In 2023, proposed judicial reforms by Netanyahu's government sparked mass protests, the largest in Israeli history. Critics feared erosion of democratic checks and balances. Supporters claimed it restored elected power over unelected judges. The controversy exposed deep fractures in Israeli society and tested the strength of its democratic institutions.
Chapter 43. Israeli Arabs and Internal Challenges. About 21% of Israeli citizens are Arab, mostly Muslim, with Christian and Druze minorities. While they enjoy voting rights and access to education, many face economic inequality, discrimination in housing and employment, underrepresentation in national politics and decision-making. Tensions peaked during the May 2021 riots, when violence broke out in mixed cities like Lod, Akko, and Jaffa, revealing unresolved issues in Jewish-Arab coexistence within Israel. At the same time, efforts continue to integrate Arab citizens into Israeli society through education, entrepreneurship, and shared civil service. Chapter 44. Israel and the Palestinians, a stalemate. By the mid-2020s, the two-state solution has grown increasingly remote. Key obstacles include expansion of Jewish settlements in the West Bank, continued division between Hamas, Gaza, and Fatah, West Bank, lack of trust on both sides, shifting focus of Arab governments away from the Palestinian issue. Israel maintains security control over much of the West Bank and blockades Gaza, citing defense needs. Palestinians experience restricted movement, economic hardship, and limited autonomy. Occasional flare-ups, rocket attacks, IDF raids, and street violence punctuate a fragile status quo. Chapter 45. Jewish Identity and the Role of Religion. What does it mean to be a Jewish state? This question lies at the heart of Israeli debates. The law of return gives Jews worldwide the right to immigrate and gain citizenship. Yet, Orthodox authorities control marriage, conversion, and other personal status issues. Secular Israelis often resist religious coercion. Non-Orthodox denominations, Reform, Conservative, are marginalized. And diaspora Jews, especially in the U.S., increasingly feel alienated. The 2018 nation-state law, defining Israel as the national home of the Jewish people, drew praise and criticism alike, viewed by some as affirming identity, by others as marginalizing minorities. Chapter 46. Technological prowess and global standing. Despite internal strife, Israel continues to thrive in science, medicine, and technology.
Major achievements include Iron Dome missile defense system,
Nobel Prizes in chemistry and economics, a booming startup ecosystem nicknamed Silicon Wadi. Israel is a global leader in cybersecurity, water conservation, artificial intelligence, and agricultural innovation. These advancements contribute to partnerships with countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, as well as robust ties with the United States, despite occasional political differences. Chapter 47. Memory, Education, and Resilience. Holocaust remembrance remains central to Israeli identity. Yad Vashem, national ceremonies, and mandatory youth visits to Poland ensure the memory of genocide informs national consciousness. Military service in the IDF is a rite of passage for most Jewish Israeli youth, reinforcing shared experience and responsibility. Education emphasizes Jewish history, Zionist ideals, and increasingly, critical thinking and tech literacy. Despite war, terrorism, and division, Israel has endured and reinvented itself time and again. Chapter 48. The Future of Israel. Israel's future is shaped by questions: can it remain both Jewish and democratic? Will it find a lasting peace with Palestinians? How will it manage its diverse population? Can its innovation economy be reconciled with rising inequality? Some dream of a binational state, others of further disengagement, still others of deepening normalization with Arab neighbors and global powers. In the face of threats, internal and external, Israel's story remains one of resilience, reinvention, and remarkable survival. Conclusion. The eternal question. The story of Israel and of the Jewish people is a narrative unlike any other. A people exiled and dispersed, a faith preserved through law, memory, and hope, a land returned to after 2,000 years of longing. Israel stands today as a modern state, rooted in ancient identity, navigating modern complexity. Its history is not just about politics and wars. It is a chronicle of belief, identity, and the human drive for continuity. And it remains, as always, a land where past and future meet.